Hello everyone, this is the 11th of January and we're back with a new episode of the Harstem Hour. Today we're going to be having a look at ELAZER'S early game and ELAZER'S diversity of strategy in a series he played recently against Stats in the TSL number 6, which by the way has been a fantastic tournament. If you've been missing those games, be sure to check them out somewhere on YouTube or check it out on Twitch. I'm not sure if they're all uploaded already, but I kind of want to be going over ELAZER'S games because the way that he approaches CVP right now is very early game focused with a kind of a wide variety of strategies that sometimes look like each other, but sometimes are just so wild that you kind of can't comprehend what's going on. And a lot of it is focused on being the one in control in the early game, kind of going into that mid game, where then very often he either goes into a big push or he goes into some kind of aggressive play in general. Even from higher drone count, all of this kind of centered around getting to that drone count that he wants, arrive there safely, and then bang, 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 keep down the roach button or the link bailing button or whatever he's doing, and just go straight for that attack. So let's hop straight into our first game here, which is going to be played on Submarine, where he immediately opens up with a strategy that has been extremely common on Submarine as well, and for a very good reason. It's going to be the 12th pool, as we see no drones being built here. Now, the 12th pool is so extremely powerful on Submarine is because it's a short rush distance map, okay? This is the shortest rush distance in the current map pool. It has a wall that requires 3 major structures to wall, which means that will give a natural delay onto the natural as well. So as we kind of see how this strategy will evolve in this game, I'm gonna try to give a couple of pointers and just try to give some context as to what the right moves potentially could be or should be for the Protoss player to deal with such a strategy, but also kind of show off why this strategy is so good on this map once again. So we see the first 8 links. Nowadays very common to go up to 10 links total before going back into drones. So we're going to see one more link most of the time, or one more set of links at this point. Yeah, there we go. It's a little bit delayed for some reason, but it's okay. And then follow it up with an Overlord. Now, Pylon tried to deny the natural, and what ELAZER did is the first 2 links that came out, he still sent across the map. So rather than attacking with the first 4 links, he decided, okay, I'm gonna attack with links number 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, so my first 2 links can go across the map. This forces the Protoss opponent to fully wall off, as we can see here, right? And as long as the Protoss is forced to fully wall off, he can't be building a Nexus, which is the thing you want to be denying as a Zerg. We also see Stats going for the approach with a pylon on the bottom side. This exposes a pylon, but it does mean he's saving 150 minerals on any potential other building that he would have needed to build the wall with. So if it wasn't a pylon here, it would have to be a gateway or a second cybercore. No, just should be a gateway, but something else. And this allows Stats to get a faster Nexus out, which is very important to get that faster Nexus out. So second Zealot coming out as well. Now, I don't completely like the position of this pylon, as this pylon is in a very vulnerable spot. We can imagine a world in which this cybercore and the pylon position were swapped. That does expose the cybercore a little bit more, but it does mean that this pylon is a lot safer. And right now this pylon is just going to be taken down by the links, as we see Stats kind of struggling to keep it alive, even with 2 Zealots out. So it's going to put him into a supply block. He does manage to get this Nexus down, and the reason that Nexus is so important is because very often against 12 pool you see Tosses kind of over defend in a way. So they get a second gateway, they'll get 2 pylons, sometimes even a 3rd pylon before Nexus, sometimes a second gas instead of the 3rd pylon before Nexus. And what this does to the TOS economy is, you can say, well, it doesn't necessarily delay the TOS eco that much, right? They're just continuously building workers, and Zerg is investing in a lot in the early game. Sure, that might be true, but the longer you delay that Nexus on the natural, you're gonna be oversaturated in the main by a lot. And if you're oversaturated in the main by a lot, whether that's 5 too many workers or 6 too many workers, these workers are practically useless for an increase in income. So if the Zerg just gets a faster hatchery than you, even if he has maybe 1 less or 2 less drones, he's going to be mining more efficiently and getting more minerals, and that's kind of getting a lead in the game anyway. So a lot of the damage from the 12 pool usually is going to be indirect. There's a fine line that you need to walk as a TOS between being economically safe and being safe and still having some type of an economy. And it's important to keep that in mind. For example, very often, especially at lower levels, you'll hear people say things like, well, if I my opponent 2-rexed me or cannon rushed me and I defended perfectly, I took no damage whatsoever. This is something you very often hear. And yet he was so far behind. It's something I get emails from, and you'll see it in the YouTube comments, whatever, on Reddit. Very often, if you watch the replay, what actually happened is that the Zerg got cannon rushed. He built 7 spines and 40 links and cut workers at 10, basically. And it's like, well, look, I took no damage. My hatchery is still alive. All my spines are alive. Sure, I lost 3 workers, but he also lost 5 cannons. And meanwhile, the TOS expanded at like the 2.5 minute mark as he was cannoning. It's like you're not actually ahead. If you defend with too much against a relatively minor investment, because don't get me wrong, 12 pool is an investment, but it's a relative minor investment. You're not going to be really far behind, even if the TOS does react perfectly. So if you don't react perfectly and you over defend, yeah, you're just going to be behind. And this is something that stats try to avoid by not getting that second gateway, but he pays the price. He lets the links in and he loses the pylon, which supply blocks him, which forces him to not be, well, force him into a supply block. So he can't build any workers right now. That's gonna cost him 1.5 worker. Worker takes 12 seconds to build. Pylon takes 18 seconds to build. So yeah, 1.5 less probe. And he's also gonna lose, I believe, 2 probes over here to these links, which is a big deal. It's a pretty big deal, yeah. So if we're now looking at this overall situation, we see the units lost tab heavily in favor of ELAZER, and ELAZER in a leading position. And this is kind of what I was talking about with ELAZER, is that he tends to make these moves where he gets ahead in the early game, and then from there on out, with the experience that he has in that situation, which most of the time is going to be more, right? If you're the one doing something aggressive, if you're preparing a 12 pool on submarine, you're going to practice this 12 pool on submarine a lot, and you have a lot of experience in that situation. And because of that, you're going to be able, even if this game wouldn't have gone as well as it did right now for ELAZER, I still think he would have been fine because he has so much experience in this situation. He kind of knows the possible follow-ups, and perhaps Stats is a little bit afraid, like he doesn't quite know what ELAZER is going to do. I mean, he did prepare 12 pool. What else is there coming out of here, right? Could be the question. So perhaps Stats would be a little bit more afraid to make any real big decisions, and ELAZER with more experience might be able to still transition this into a better mid-game situation for himself than for Stats. But that's not even going to be necessary, as his early game was so good here that no matter what really happens, he's going to be going into a successful mid-game, or at least in a mid-game where he's slightly ahead. The way that Stats actually approaches this, I thought was really cool. So he throws down a 3rd gateway, I think it was, 2nd and a 3rd gateway, and then goes into Twilight Council later on. And what he does, he kind of uses this as how Terrans would play an 8-rex against Circus, where they just rally across the map. You kind of try to keep a position and rally across the map and be trading with your units, or at least forcing out more and more units, keeping your opponent on a low economy. So a lot of Zergs, what they do in this situation is they would just keep building units. The moment they're seeing more and more units come out, I guess he would be seeing it with this Overlord as well. He doesn't actually see it that well, but the moment you see more units being added, you just keep adding more and more units, and you kind of forget to drone up. ELAZER, however, he's just doing the right thing here. So he's using 6 larvae for units, and 6 larvae for drones. 6 larvae for units, 6 larvae for drones. He knows he's under pressure, so he's going to need to increase the unit count, but because TOS can easily produce workers while building units, he also doesn't want to stop completely building drones. So see, he's just kind of sprinkling in drones like cacao powder on your hot chocolate. That's something you do, right? I was getting stuff stuck in my throat and start coughing like a madman. So yeah, just be sure to sprinkle in a little bit of that goodness as ELAZER'S doing that, gets into a roach warren as well, off of single gas. So perfect response to whatever this is by stats. And as his metabolic boost is about to finish up, these Adept without glaives are going to be in a crap ton of trouble. And boom, there we go. Just goes for the surround. Queens join in for a little bit of added DPS. And without glaives, Lynx actually trade extremely well against these Adepts. We see Stats trying to finish it up, but really he's just trading units for units, and he's losing map control. If the Zerg trades units for units and doesn't lose the map control, what very often happens is that Zerg gets to decide, hey, how many drones do I want to build? So right now, we're in a spot at which ELAZER has an army, and he can basically kill any amount of Adepts up to like 15 or 16, or at least ensure that he doesn't take any more damage until he builds new units. This basically gives him a free pass to continue building drones until he wants to stop. There is nothing right now in this game which can stop ELAZER from droning. So that's exactly what ELAZER's gonna do. He's gonna set up for a mid-game timing by getting the ideal drone count way faster than his opponent will be able to. Because the moment the Zerg is left alone, he can just drone up way faster than any other race can, right? That's just something that's kind of inherent about Zergs and how larvae work, is that you're just going to be to outproduce your opponent. That's just a fact. That's how the race is designed. So we see him getting his Evo chamber, we see him getting into 5 gases already. And it's going to be going up to a drone count of about 60. Now, if anyone was watching StarCraft back in the early Wings days, is that the 60 drone roach max is a scary strategy. Initially, obviously, popularized by Stefano, who managed to hit it. I think back then it was at 12 minutes. Now, of course, with a 12 worker start, that all changed. But yeah, a lot of roach are very good, and now they can also turn them into Ravagers, so sentries are less useful than they used to be back in that day. And we just see 5 gas, 6 gas being taken, and you might be wondering, why in the world, I want to pause, why in the world would a 6 gas be taken if you're not actually planning on using it? And the reason for this is that very often scouts of TOS aren't going to be completely monitored. So you don't really have the time in a fast-paced game like StarCraft 2 to actually completely check your hallucination scout or your observer scout or whatever you use to scout the entire time. Very often you queue it up, and then later on you check through the fog of war like, hey, what was being built here? And that is what the gas that we're seeing right here is for. This is a gas that in theory is terrible, right? This doesn't do anything. You're not adding anything of value to your army. The only thing you're adding is a trick, something for the TOS to go, hey, wait a second, that's 6 gas. And usually the lack of a 6th gas is a great indicator for Protoss players to go, hey, there's no 6 gas, then he's probably all-inning me, whether that be with roaches or roachling or hydraling, that doesn't matter, but it makes the alarms go off. And you're gonna delay your gases if you see something like that. You're gonna be basically telling yourself, okay, this is not a macro game I need to defend. And here, stats, like we can just check, okay? Just have a look at how he's scouting. So you see, he queues up the hallucination, he checks one of the gases, and he's seen this bottom gas as well, okay? And we actually see some mining, which surprises me. It actually does surprise me that we're going to be seeing some mining from this. I really thought this was going to be more of a fake gas. I don't mind that he's mining from it, but you see the lack of drones here as well. This is really just kind of like a fake setup of, hey, I'm getting more units. And Stats is completely buying it, going into Storm, got his extra gases, investing into extra gateways, while the things that you want to be doing if you are being all-in is that you don't want to invest in extra gateways. You want to be building units with all the structures you have. You want to add batteries, you want to add cannons, quick static defense that within 30-40 seconds are going to make a difference. A gateway is going to make a difference in 2 minutes from now, right? Once you get 2-3 warpins in, that's when it will actually have an effect. But things like static defense and unit production straight from the buildings you already have, that's a real game changer. But instead, because Stats kind of got tricked by the fort base as well, right? Fort base, completely useless, perhaps adds a little bit of production, but not very necessary. We have plenty of larvae here. And Stats gets completely caught off guard, and ELAZER walks across the map and kind of collects his his early game free win. GG gets called, and really this game, I don't want to say it was over at the start, but the moment ELAZER gets in a position where he has momentum behind him, he has control of the game, and he's slightly ahead, his pushes in the mid game are so well timed out, they're so well refined, is that they become so freaking difficult to stop, especially if it's the first time you see it and you don't expect it. He has a lot of little tricks in which he tries to hide it with, hide his intentions with, and they seem to almost always work out. And it's beautiful to see how he really twists kind of the early game into his favor almost every single time. So that was the first game. Let's hop straight into the second one. Now the beauty of the thing that ELAZER does in game number 2 here is that it's really a mind game into a mind game in some way, or like a pretending aggressive strategy. So I guess it's just a single mind game really, where he's gonna proxy a hatchery and then actually play a macro game into an all-in. It is one of the weirdest strategies I've seen in a very long time, and it looks super scary. It really does look super scary. Now, I'm gonna warn you, it's not going to work, but the ideas behind it, I still think are extremely smart. So basically what we're seeing here from ELAZER is he opens up with a pool first, which is kind of a little bit of a... It's an aggressive strategy by itself already, right? So we see stats. He scouted. I'm not sure what he went to scout. He doesn't actually see that it's a pool first. But he scouts initially, and then ELAZER goes for a proxy hatchery here. Stats builds a pylon. He doesn't want anything bad to happen to him. And he sees, hey, wait, this is an early pool. This is not a 12 pool or a 14 pool. This is just a regular 16 pool. Now what he does is he gets a second pylon in the main base, starts a cybercore and a zealot. And he sees the complete lack of a hatchery at this point. And this is kind of going to start all the alarms going off in his head. Because it's like, hey, wait a second. If there's no hatcheries here, there's not going to be a hatchery here. Where is your hatchery? You know, that's kind of dangerous. So if there's no hatchery, like it has to probably be over here, right, next to the rich Vespine geyser. And ELAZER's gonna rush out speed as well with this. He's gonna continue mining on the gas. And the moment as a Protoss you see this and you see a pool first, the first thing that goes through your mind is like, okay, this is a Roach Ravager push, right? You're gonna abuse the rich Vespine geyser here to get as many Ravagers out as you can. And this is kind of what ELAZER is trusting on. So he's trusting on an overreaction from the side of stats. He wants his opponent to build a lot of gateway units, maybe some batteries, and hopefully to cut a couple of workers as well. So we see 2 extra gateways going down in the main base immediately. So tech is being delayed already. We have 3 gateway units kind of being chrono boosted out. That's chrono boost that could have been going to other things. And Stats is scouting this. He sees like 6 links. He's like, oh my god, this is bad stuff, you know, guys. This is not what we want. Builds another pylon. Starts probably adding batteries at this point as well. Gets a little bit supply block because the response to this isn't quite as tight probably because he never plays against, or hardly ever plays against builds like this. And ELAZER is like, well, it's cool. I built 6 links or 8 links, and now I'm just going to be going into more and more drones. And even though he's not super far ahead drone-wise, he did force his opponent to get a lot of infrastructure that he doesn't really need. 3 gate is completely useless going into the mid game. Don't forget that. This has absolutely 0 use at this point. So we see these 4 adepts shading forward, and sees creep threat. He's probably still afraid, you know, that's this second battery finish. And right now I think at some point Stats is going to have to realize like, hey, wait a second, what actually is going on here? He scouts and he sees, wait, what? He's just mining from here and walking on creep with these adepts at this point is probably just going to be a death sentence. Like the moment you start walking on creep, that's just a terrible situation. Now ELAZER spots this adept run by. I think this probably was his mistake, is that he didn't expect his opponent to go quite as hard here with his adepts. And he's gonna trade links out before he truly can. So he kills 1 adept, but loses a bunch of links, and then he doesn't have enough links in position here to truly get anything done while being attacked from the same time. So Stats, at this point, is using all the structures that he has in the most optimal way. He's like, okay, the units that I currently have are going to be kind of useless in a longer game. What I need, A, is I'm going to need some scouting, and then B, I'm going to need to get some value out of these units. So what he does is he shades the adepts across the map, and then he tries to move in at the same time to kind of force Elazer, A, to build a lot of links and not any extra drones, and B, just to get that scouting info. What is going to be the tech structure in the main base? And that is extremely vital. So even though Elazer is kind of in the driver's seat here, as he's the one that decided to play like this, with Stats' response, he kind of actually takes it back. And that is important to note, because the moment you take the wind out of the sails of your opponent's aggressive strategy, very often you get back into a position of control, and from a position of control, it's going to be way easier to play. So you see a bunch of drones are going down already, and a lot of links are being produced that probably he would have preferred if they were drones. And going down to 24, 28 workers, which now, instead of it just being a 2-base versus 2-base scenario with superior tech for Elazer, it turns into a 2-base versus 2-base scenario. Well, actually just a 1.5 versus 2-base scenario, which makes Elazer extremely all-in. You could say, well, he's always going to be extremely all-in, but that's not necessarily true, because you can probably be poking at this wall a bit, you can continue your creep spread, and maybe even take this as a 3rd base eventually, and then kind of play from there, play it out as a semi-normal game. Which is difficult to imagine, but it definitely could have been possible. So good responses here by Stats kind of ensure he's going to be able to get a good position in this game and eventually win it. I mean, Elazer's still gonna continue with his plan. It's not like he can transition out of it, but as the moment this Colossi pops out, in combination with the super battery and the massive eco lead here for Stats, this game just kind of ends. But you can imagine if, what is it, 11 workers hadn't gone down, it probably would have been a very, very good situation here for Elazer, where I'm not saying he will be able to straight up break through, but I think it's going to be a lot closer here with Stats holding, and maybe there's even some tricks Elazer can do, like a quick 8-link drop into the main base or something like that. Like there's a couple of extra little things that perhaps Elazer would have been able to do, and even now, you know, it still looks relatively close, which is cool to see. So it kind of shows the power of this strategy and the power of confusion in the early game here. That's just a little bit too good at reacting. But even though Elazer loses this game, he plants the seed into his opponent's brain, basically saying, hey, I'm crazy. And you never want to mess with a crazy guy. It's very tricky if you're someone, especially like Stats, who's known to be safe and solid, to start throwing out his own aggressive things if he's afraid of crazy stuff. You don't want to do a no-scout against someone that starts with a proxy hatch at 12 pool. You don't want to maybe do your own aggressive proxy or something like that. If you tend to believe that you're the better player in a standard macro game, you want to kind of get it back into that standard macro game. But if your opponent keeps trying to take the lead, that can kind of backfire in some ways. So let's hop straight into game number 3 of Elazer versus Stats. Game number 3 is played on Oxide, and here I almost feel like Elazer kind of tricks Stats into being so passive that Elazer gets to do what he wants in the greediest way possible. And this is what I'm talking about. If you pretend like you're crazy and you can do anything out there, the other guy kind of becomes paralyzed in fear and doesn't want to do anything aggressive. He's just going to be thinking about defending and different aggressive options, not realizing that by doing so, he's actually allowing even more aggressive options later on in the game because he's being so passive. And this is one of the concepts that I think Elazer abuses almost optimally in all of his games, where you're kind of paralyzed in fear, no clue what to do, because he has such a wide range in strategies. So it just starts up normal with a pylon block. Do note that Stats once again decided to scout. Now, I don't think scouting every game is bad, but I think every now and then doing a no scout also is nice. It does give you a lot of extra minerals and does tighten up your builds a little bit, but Stats is just simply too afraid to... I mean, there's no way that someone who just got proxy hatched and before that 12 boot is going to be able to no scout, or it's gonna... You're going to need very big balls to no-scout in this situation, alright? That's all I'm going to be saying for now. That's all I'm going to be saying. As it's actually just a standard hatchery first on the 3rd base. And we're going to be seeing a couple of what should we call them? A couple of liberties that that ELAZER will take. He's going to be like, okay, you know what? I know you're going to be afraid. I know you're going to be thinking of everything aggressive I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be playing way greedier. And I really want to point out these spots once we get there. Okay, so I see stats just harassing minerals, pretty standard stuff. Nothing too crazy going on here. Building the pylon at the ramp. Now, this is something that a lot of the Koreans do. And it allows you to spot an area with your second pylon, but it also means that the opponent's going to have a way easier time spotting your tech. And that is exactly what should happen here. The moment ELAZER sees, hey, first unit isn't a stalker, I think he will just peek back in and check, is it going to be a Stargate or a Twilight? And in this case, it's going to be a Stargate. So yeah, exactly what I said is going to happen. ELAZER's just going to fly in here, see, hey, wait a second, that's a Stargate. And now he can decide to do two things. So either he can completely send it back home because he's afraid of either Void Ray or of a Phoenix. Or he can try to leave it around and hope to get back in later on. And now, something I want to show you guys is the complete lack of respect that ELAZER has for Stargate units, okay? He doesn't give a crap about them. He actually doesn't care at all. As we see this Overlord almost escaping to safety, but does get caught in the end. He gets a single spore, and this spore is going to be used in the natural. And the way that ELAZER, this is by the way something that is called the Polish Gambit, is where you kind of gamble or on one base not being defended completely properly and two others being defended completely properly. So kind of giving yourself a 66% chance. Now, ELAZER builds a lot of links, or well, a lot. He has a decent amount of links in the early game, okay? This is 14 links in the early game. This is kind of early for this many links, and this is kind of gonna scare stats into doing anything aggressive with his second Oracle. And because with a Void Ray, it can be kind of difficult to scout things, he's gonna have very poor scouting this game. Now, if you've been 12 pooled and hatchery, proxy hatched before, you're gonna be more afraid of whatever is coming next. So, see battery coming down. We have 3 adepts so far, 2 extra gates. Pay attention here to the probe cut that is happening in order to get all these structures down. 2 sentries being warped in, that's a gas investment, that's a mineral investment. All of these things are trying to ensure like, hey, am I going to be safe against this? On top of that, he kept his Oracle at home for the majority of the time. We see a spore skip in both the third and the main base. And the funny thing here is that because he's doing this spore skip, these 14 links kind of already paid their own dividends in the way that they just paid for themselves, keeping that Oracle on the other side of the map, being able to skip these spores. And that's very, very important. Evo chamber goes down, and we see ELAZER pull heavily ahead in the worker count right now. It's going to be about 45 against... or actually, yeah, 47 against 56. So solid 10 workers ahead here. And after those initial 14 links, he really doesn't need to build a single ling anymore. He hasn't built a single ling, and he won't need to build any extra. Now we see 4 sentries being warped in, blink +1. This is a build order that is not necessarily very good, but is really, really safe and allows for some aggression. So the way that Stats decides to approach it, he's like, okay, I know what you're doing. You're trying to either be very aggressive, and if you're being way too greedy, then I can do something that is safe against aggression, and that is good against overly greedy people that go up to like 85 or 90 drones immediately. So he kind of takes an approach here, being safe through aggression. Okay, so by cutting workers, he's going to have earlier units, that type of stuff. So he's safe against anything ELAZER can throw at him. The thing is, this only works against builds that either hit pre-66 workers or builds that go way over the 66 workers. The moment you're fighting against someone who's gonna go to a higher worker count way faster than you and then start producing a lot of units from there, yeah, you're just gonna be in a little bit of trouble. So right now we see ELAZER getting to 67 workers at an insane time. It's something like 550, 545. In game, he went up to 67 workers, and from here on out, he's just once again going to be going into a very tight timing He's going to be clearing those rocks, he's going to be building a decent amount of roaches, and then follow that up with swarm host. And right now Stats is like, oh crap, wait, I'm going to need gases, I'm going to probably need to add production at some point. I mean, he's still only on 4 gateways, so he starts adding production. So he kind of took a middle of the road approach here, but the middle of the road isn't what he needed. He needed a very fast, hard approach, going all out on aggression or going all out on economy. So really a fantastic mind game, I would even say, here by ELAZER, who once again just gets a very big supply lead, gets complete freedom to do whatever he wants, just by getting those early 40 links and planting a seed in Stats' brain, saying, hey, you know what happened last time I built a lot of links? I followed it up with like 25 hydras of 35 workers. Are you ballsy enough to call my bluff here? And Stats wasn't. So Stats, right now, he starts throwing down a lot of batteries. He's like, well, crap, I don't really have any tech. I don't really have much of anything. He's only still on 6 gateways. It's not the greatest production. He's just down 50 supply. Against someone who's never gonna stop being aggressive here at this point. So initial fight being taken. Now, usually the thing with this fight, in in a game that is more even, what happens is, this fight can't go well for the Zerg until the swarm hosts arrive. The moment the swarm hosts arrive, the first wave usually is used to push back those roaches, or to push back the TOS army, and then perhaps you try and get the roaches into the natural, or you try to trade a bit with biles, trying to control a ramp area. There's a couple of things you can be doing here, but because the early game of ELAZER was so good, and because he built a lot of roaches, he actually is capable of kind of trading already at this point, and that's absolutely crazy to me. So his first locust wave actually doesn't need to be used to push this army away. He's actually just using his roaches to push this army away, and instead of having to make space for the roaches, he's now capable of making space for the swarm host. And that's gonna allow him, for his first locust wave, to straight away go into the natural. Rather than having to chase this army away, otherwise he'll be trained to bed, he now goes straight into the natural. And Stats is like, well, wait, that's not good. A single locust drops down. 2 major units are going to fall here, 2 immortals, which is like the absolute backbone of this army, right? There's not a lot of DPS in this army without the immortals. And the longer this game goes on, these guys will just be able to snipe out any important units, or perhaps even snipe the natural. And the moment you deny the immortals, your roaches are going to keep fighting better and better. So Stats kind of falls into a snowball where he'll never be able to contest this area, even if the locust wave isn't up, which means that he needs split forces, which makes this army weaker, which means he can never contest this area. And basically this is going to keep going on until Stats somehow finds a way to either join up these armies, or until he has enough armies on both sides where, with the help of static defense, he can actually defend both sides successfully. But that is not the case at all here, and we see ELAZER trading extremely efficiently. Another thing I want to add is that we see Stats float a lot of money, and you could say, well, that's really dumb. Like, how this guy's a pro player. Why was he floating? Well, I think he was floating 1k actually at some point. Let's scroll back to that point. He's floating like 1.6k resources, and the reason for that is because he built his gateways so late. He only is on 6 gateways right now, only 7 production structures, including that one robo. I guess he also has a Stargate, right? So 8 production structures. And the problem with that is simply that you don't have enough production. He needed these gateways earlier, but because he was so intent on building a lot of units early on to be safe, he doesn't have the production now to continue getting more and more units, which means he either needs to add more static defense, but static isn't that great against Locust, because with static defense he can never contest the actual swarm host. So he's just stuck in between a rock and a hard place, where he wants to add those gateways, but the gateways only kick in 2 minutes, and if he does that, he'll probably die before then. But if he doesn't build them, he's going to start floating money, and does he really want to add more static? I don't know. So he just gets caught in this really uncomfortable situation, which he got put in by ELAZER, by some solid early game once again, and some cute mind games. So this roach attack just kind of continues. I mean, this isn't that impressive anymore at this point, right? The 18 workers go down, the locust, bam, absolutely going ham in the natural, the rest of the roaches doing their job, and The beauty of this is that you kind of want to be trading as a Zerg, because your units keep getting worse. The bigger the army supplies for both players, the worse the Zerg army gets. So as long as you're trading with this army and semi-effectively trading, usually you're going to be fine. I mean, once you're up 100 supply, actually always you're going to be fine. So takes out this Nexus. Probably could have taken out this Forge as well, but probably was busy microing these roaches. And Ravager fort base goes down, and +2 finishes up. I mean, he could even start tacking into Hive at this point and maybe get a Lurker then for extreme safety, but I don't even mind if he just keeps pushing. I mean, he still has a lot of momentum on his side. His opponent has 27 army supply, so there's literally, I think anything at this point is going to be good enough. Locust going to the main base, and I think might even be able to snipe this Nexus. Yep, so 2 Nexuses down, 1 Nexus remaining, and that's going to be all she wrote for stats, as ELAZER takes game number 3 and actually puts himself in a 2-1 spot, ready for match point. So let's head into that game number 4 straight away and see what he has in store for us there. Now, before we truly get into this game, I kind of want to focus on what we've seen so far, right? So we've seen the 12th pool on Submarine, we've seen the proxy hatch on Romanticide, and then we've seen that kind of early 14-16 links, planting a seed of doubt, a seed of like, hey, is this aggression coming again at me? Into that very greedy Roach Ravager swarm host play, which kind of caught Stats off guard. Don't forget, Stats has been having a lot of trouble scouting already, and ELAZER once again is going to abuse that, the fact that he's been playing very aggressive, but at different times in the game. Once again, he's going to be abusing that against Stats, and he's kind of toying with his mind at this point. What is that? Is that a pineapple? That's a cactus. It looked a bit like something wrong with a pineapple. There's a lot of cactuses on this map. I usually don't play in these high graphics, so I'm not aware of all these little doodads on the map. It's cute to see. As we see a couple of extra drones here. Or a drone, sorry, moving towards the 3rd base. Once again, early scout coming out of Stats, of course. He straight away moves to the main. Okay, this is a trick. This is cool to see. So he kind of wants to force this drone to come back and then be late with the hatchery there. But ELAZER doesn't give a crap. He has his plan already. He's like, you can do whatever you want, Stats. I'm a man with a plan, and I'm going to absolutely destroy you. So let's go straight into the juicy part of this game. As there definitely is some juicy stuff here, of course. We see Stats actually opening up with your standard 1 gate expand. No real variation possible in the early game for Tulls. Perhaps a cannon rush is a possibility, but not necessarily the best thing usually, especially on a map like Pillars of Gold. There's not great spots here for cannon rush. Used to be a really nice spot here with a pylon, and being able to put 1 cannon in here, but that spot got removed after Blizzard deemed it too strong or something. I don't know. I don't care. I don't cannon rush too much myself. So we have our man ELAZER moving forward with his Overlord. He's going to be taking his 3rd base relatively soon. We just want to be looking at exactly how he's trying to deny the scouting of Stats and how he's trying to make Stats believe things that Stats really shouldn't be believing. So once again, we have that straight Stargate. Did open up with a Stalker first this time into an Adept. So a little bit of a different opener here for Stats, who is going to be trying to hide the fact that he's playing a Stargate opener. Now, the funny thing is that actually trying to hide that fact against ELAZER isn't super useful, because he's planning on doing the Polish Gambit anyway, right? He wants to be skipping those spores to get the ultimate aggression out. Whatever timing he wants to do that aggression, he wants to get there as fast as possible. That's going to be possible by skipping spores, by skipping links in the early game. We see 6 links actually not skipping. That's a perfect amount of links. He's going to be pretty happy with that, and he builds 6 more links. So once again, building a similar amount of links as that last game. So he goes straight up to 12 links and then kind of tries to put into Stats' mind like, hey, this is the same thing as we've seen before. How are you gonna deal with it this time, buddy? How are you gonna be more aggressive with your units? Like, what is the plan? So ELAZER ends up losing 3 workers here. Still probably worth it for him, considering that he skipped spores in both the main and the 3rd base. Well, I guess this technically is the natural, but at the 3rd base location, it's only gonna have a spore over here. Now we see Stats, Void Ray coming out, actually gonna be going into 2 Stargate Void Ray. And ELAZER, still with these early game links, now is going to build 14 more links. And this is something that ELAZER has been doing for a while, is where he kind of gets a decent amount of links in the mid game, whether that's somewhere between 20 and 30 links, to kind of obscure or obstruct his intentions. It's like to make it harder for the opponent to figure out what's happening. Because very often the main way that a toss gets information is through aggression, whether that's with Adepts, whether that's with Oracle, whether that's with Void Ray. And getting a lot of links on the map kind of makes it harder for the Zerg or for the toss to see, hey, X or Y is going on right now. So we see a big flood of links. Now, once again, this is two things. This either can actually be an effective way for aggression, or it can be an effective way of denying scouting. And we see Nidus network goes down as all the units are getting pulled back. Now we do see this is going to be patrolling here, and he's going to spot at least a couple of extra links. But he doesn't actually have enough defense in place to properly get batteries or cannons going. And you don't really want to be throwing down 4 batteries if all you're seeing is like 20, 30 links, you know? Like that's not enough reason to go all out. But he has no clue what's actually happening. He sees no roaches, just more and more links. And he's trying to actually defend these links. And another thing these links here are doing is they're actually securing this Nidus in going up, basically. Because with these links, he's saying, hey, Stats, you need to defend this. If you're not defending this, you're going to lose your workers. You might lose your base. You might lose all your batteries. Then the Nidus goes up. And all of a sudden, the Void Rays are way too late. Queens are across the map. Roaches are here. And the moment this Nidus goes up against a double Stargate Void Ray build, that tends to be extremely good for the Zerg player. Because if we think about how a Nidus functions against Void Ray build, is that the main type of DPS for the Protoss is going to be in those Void Rays, okay? These Void Rays are going to be the main way to defend them. And actually, with 3 hatcheries, you're going to be outproducing the double Stargate Void Ray. And on top of that, Queens are better than Void Rays in bigger numbers, because you get that transfuse energy added onto it the longer the game goes on. And there's not that much of a ground army, because charge +1, everything is going to be delayed. So it's going to be a very, very long time until those things come into play. So you can never really outproduce the Zerg with Void Rays, and you don't have a ground army to fight it. So the longer the game goes on, actually the better it tends to get for the Zerg player. And you also have positions like this, where the Protoss needs to decide, like, hey, do I want to defend my natural? Do I want to defend my third? And he also needs to spend... or he needs to basically split his battery and cannon production between 2 bases. Which sucks, because then he's going to have split defenses once again. And similar to that last game, is where once you have split defenses, it becomes super difficult to defend things. You see Stasis go down, another Nidus for quicker reinforcements, either with Queens or with Roaches, whatever it is. And... once again, this could have been a very slow push, but ELAZER smells an opportunity, jumps on top of his opponent, and there's just simply not enough for Stats to hold, as he's straight up gonna fall to this Nidus. So we really had 4 extremely aggressive strategies in 4 different games. One of them didn't work, 3 did work, but every single one of them was different. And every single one kind of planted a seed of doubt in the mind of Stats. It's like, hey, can I really get away with X? Can I get away with Y? Should I be doing perhaps something else here? And I'm not going to deny that perhaps ELAZER did get a little bit fortunate with some of the strategy picks. I mean, Queen Nidus against double Stargate Void Ray is a very nice build order setup, but he's also really set up this series brilliantly with the strategy picks, with the execution of his strategies, with the risks that he took, and what he allowed Stats to get away with and what he didn't allow him to get away with. Every single time ELAZER basically said, okay, if you do X, Y, or Z, you're gonna be in a fine spot. But if you do like kind of 5 other letters, A to E, you're gonna be in a worse spot. And he just picks very smart gambles, and they seem to work out a lot. Really playing with the Toss's mind, just pushes forward and gonna end this game. And even though ELAZER probably isn't considered one of the top Zergs right now, like at least not a top 2 or a top 3 Zerg, that probably would be Dark, Serral, Raynor, he does manage to take out definitely a top 3 Protoss, right? stats is at least, I think, the second best Protoss in the world right now. Taking him out in such a decisive fashion. I mean, the games that stats lost didn't really look all that close. And just like that, very clean series, very clean execution of build orders. He just kind of manages to destroy stats within 7-8 minutes every single game. And yeah, it's impressive. That's actually going to be it for today's episode of the Harstem Hour. If you did enjoy this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That would be much appreciated. Or I also have a Patreon which you can subscribe to. That's also appreciated. Thumbs up, leave down a comment below if you have any questions about this series, or if you want me to have any input on a different series or on a different concept. You can always ask that down in the description or in the comment section below, and I'll have a look at it. As a lot of you seem to be enjoying these as well, and the viewership seems to be going up on the Harstem Hours, which makes me happy. Because of course content actually related to improving in the game or trying to explain why certain things happen is the main reason why I started this channel. A lot of it now is entertainment, but this is truly where my heart lies. So thanks all for watching, and I hope to see you next time for more stuff. Bye bye.